What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Yesterday, we had Valve show up in a big way with multiple pieces of hardware that they showed off. And not only do we have a VR headset that was announced, but also a new console and controller. So a lot of stuff to go over, which we'll take a look at everything here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony with two games that have been announced. One, well, it is for Ratchet and Clank, and the other is actually an MMO. The only issue right now is that neither of them are for the PlayStation 5. So we'll look at all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. We're here every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, keeping you up to date in the world of gaming. So if you don't get a notification necessarily on YouTube, just understand there's probably a video here for you to check out in the morning. And we're going to start today with that Mario Galaxy movie direct. It did happen. We had Miyamoto and Illumination, all that there to show off a new, about 2-minute long trailer. And they also announced some new voice actors and actresses for the movie, which we can actually see some screenshots from the trailer here because they're not going to strike us down here, so we'll look at some screenshots from it. But we have Brie Larson, who's voicing Rosalina, who was shown in the trailer, and Benny Safdie, who's voicing Bowser Jr., also introduced in the trailer. And you know what? The trailer itself, it still has kind of that comedic tone at times, as we saw with the first Mario movie, or the most recent one, I should say. And I think this movie in particular is going to look awesome up on the big screen. Like, just a lot of the effects, kind of the galaxy theming for it. But when they were going through, it looked like there's some stuff from Mario Odyssey in there as well. Kind of the upside down pyramid. So I like what I'm seeing here. I think it'll just be one of those fun movies, popcorn flicks to go see with the family. And I like what I've seen so far. Even the opening with a little Bowser there, still small from the end of the first movie. So definitely looks like a lot of fun. And I'm curious if they have any other big surprises up their sleeve, because they don't have the movie coming out until the first week of April. Kind of makes you wonder if they have anything else they want to reveal going into it, or maybe just leave some of those big cameos and reveals when people go there to be genuinely surprised. Also, we got some updated sales numbers for Arc Raiders. We can see this over on IGN, where they say Arc Raiders has now sold over 4 million copies worldwide, less than 2 weeks since its release date, cementing its commercial success. The publisher Nexon did confirm the milestone in a glowing press release, which also revealed that the extraction shooter had reached a huge concurrent count of, get this, 700,000 players across all platforms. That's massive, by the way, for a multiplayer-focused game like this. Even the PvPvE nature to it, you need a lot of people still playing, right? The idea is coming across different people in the game and really just seeing how people react to each other, because there's the idea that you'll just start shooting at each other, and then in other cases, maybe you'll kind of work together or alongside of each other. That's the interesting, I guess, just test for human nature with Arc Raiders. But I will say, for an extraction shooter, this seems to be doing really, really well. And there are always concerns that if you die in the game and lose something really, really cool, a nice piece of equipment or something, or a gun, that you just outright quit. Doesn't seem to be the case, though, with Arc Raiders. So off and running here with a game that people are getting a kick out of. And it'll be awesome to see what the future holds for Arc Raiders. But then also, I guess, the extraction shooter genre, which we think Marathon is, coming up next year. That'll be interesting to see how that does with Arc Raiders after they burst onto the scene here. Oh, and we did have an anniversary yesterday on November 12th, 2025. That marks 5 years. 5 years since the PlayStation 5 came out. Now, Sony has mentioned that they think they're about halfway through the PS5's life, and that's not too surprising considering the PS4 is technically still around. In that state of play, there were some PS4 logos in there, so the PS5, it's probably not even at the halfway mark. I think this system is going to go into like 2035. It's going to be a while, but it is also hard to believe that it's really been 5 years since the system came out. It really doesn't feel like it's been that long ago, but here we are. And I know people look at this right now as kind of a disappointing generation so far, but there have legitimately been a lot of awesome games just across the board. I think it's mostly the first party side from Sony for PS5 specific titles up to this point. But if you take into account the cross-gen and a lot of the third party stuff and even some breakout successes, it's actually been a pretty cool 5 years with the PlayStation 5. So we'll see what Sony has in store for us with the PlayStation 6 when we're ready to show that off. But for now, the PS5 will be continuing on. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Valve and multiple pieces of hardware they decided to announce all at once. Now, we were starting to get some information. There were some leaks going around that yesterday was going to be a big day if you're a fan of Valve and what they've done with something like the Steam Deck. So that, of course, got people thinking, okay, some sort of new device is about to be revealed. VR was the leading candidate for a lot of guesses, and it makes sense. We've been hearing about Deckard and this all-in-one VR headset that they were working on. So that's kind of what I was thinking, okay, that, maybe the controller. No, Valve was ready to announce everything, and that did include a new console. Well, kind of a console. But let's take a look. We're going to go through everything that they revealed here, and we'll start with that VR headset here at the top. They do have an entire website that they launched to go into finer detail, and I'll have that website linked down below, and then you can go between all these pieces of hardware. They also did an entire trailer showing this stuff off, so again, a lot to check out here. But we'll start at the top with the Steam Frame. This is their wireless all-in-one headset. Now, they do say it's a streaming-first VR headset. Although it does support standalone mode, this seems to be mostly geared towards the idea of streaming experiences, say from your PC, to this device. And in fact, it includes a wireless 6 GHz adapter that provides a dedicated link. And they have 2 different radios here. So one will be for audio and visuals, and the other will connect to your Wi-Fi just for data transfer. So you won't, they say, have any bandwidth issues between all of that. It does have foveated streaming optimization, which means that where you are looking while it's streaming, it's able to provide higher details. So let's say in your peripherals where it won't matter as much, those could be blurrier, but this way you can cut down on, for this, just streaming back and forth and make the experience just look better in VR, which is very important because if you start getting a blurry experience, well, it won't go well for your stomach, but also just it's not going to look great or be a very convincing, experience. Now, the Steam Frame controllers, they work with VR and non-VR games with split control design. If it's not a VR game, they kind of have it set up where it's this massive floating screen in front of you. But it is a full PC, so has a Snapdragon processor, 16 gigabytes of low-power DDR5X RAM. It's a 256 gigabyte or 1 terabyte storage options. Rechargeable 21.6 watt-hour battery. It has custom pancake lenses, large field of view, 2160 by 2160 LCD per eye, and up to 144 hertz refresh. They do say that is experimental. So on the VR side, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are into that, like VR, who are pretty excited to see this new headset from Steam. We don't have any pricing on any of this stuff, and that's going to come up again later on when we reflect on a lot of this tech, but I think really with the VR headset, it does seem to be kind of that Quest 3 competitor, so you would expect it to slot in around that sort of price point. But again, we have some other stuff we can look at. For example, this is the Steam Machine. Certainly caught a lot of headlines because it's their console. It's a small cube box console. Looks like a GameCube, yes, but it's measuring in 6 inches by 6 inches. So it is, it's fairly small. And that's the idea here. Have a compact little box that can run all of your Steam games. So it is SteamOS optimized. You can load other operating systems. So if you want it to be Windows, you can do that. You can just load Windows on there, very similar to the Steam Deck, and then you can do, Game Pass or stuff like that. Has DisplayPort and HDMI out. They do mark the HDMI out as an HDMI 2.0, but can do 4K 120. This has some people kind of confused right now with that. On DisplayPort, they just have up to 8K, so just outright. There's plenty of bandwidth there for DisplayPort. Now, there's the 512 gigabyte and 2 terabyte options available. And then they have micro SD card slot for expandable storage there. It's pretty easy. It's actually right on the front of the device towards the bottom where that power button is. There's also a large LED strip on the front, and they mention, it's pretty cool, so it's RGB. They mention it can do stuff like display how your download is going. So I kind of think what'll happen is, let's say you start a download and you turn your TV off, or maybe you move it over to another input because it's like a 80 gigabyte download. It's going to take some time. You want to watch TV or something while it's doing it. Well, the idea being that LED strip can maybe fill up. It's supposed to be able to show things like download progress without having to have the display on. That's a really cool idea. It's also fully customizable. You can even just turn it off if you don't want it to light up at all. And that can be distracting, of course, if you have a big LED bar, but you have the lights out completely, maybe in a nice theater room, so I understand why you'd want to just turn it off as well. Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3. The power supply is built in, so there's no large external brick that you have to hide behind your entertainment center. The specifications, AMD Zen 4, this is all semi-custom tech, they said. 6-core, 12-thread CPU, up to 4.8 gigahertz. On the GPU side, RDNA 3, 28 compute units at 2.45 gigahertz. All right, is like the max sustainable that they can do there. And it's drawing comparisons right now to the RX 7600. Now, it's not going to be exact because, again, it's semi-custom and stuff. That just seems to be where people are placing it. So I'm looking at this right now, especially when you look at the 16 gigabytes of DDR5 system memory and then 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 video RAM. I'm kind of thinking this is like a solid or good 1440p box that will then use FSR upscaling to get up to 4K. And the thing with FSR, especially in a living room setting, it can work really, really well when you are, 8 feet away from a larger TV even. Think about what we do right now with our consoles, the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series. There aren't as many games you think that are native or true 4K. A lot of these games already use different tricks to try to upscale up to 4K and clean up the image as much as possible. We know AMD has a big push alongside of Sony as they're working together to really work to develop the upscaling technology, especially around FSR. So it seems like, from what I'm looking at, the Steam machine will heavily play into that. Still, though, we're going to have to see benchmarks and maybe see different settings that people find over time, but like for the best overall experience and performance with frame rate. But we've seen Valve with the Steam Deck really work to develop the OS around it, and I expect the same sort of push here for SteamOS with the Steam machine. Now, there were a lot of reactions online, but the big one that I saw was Phil Spencer himself, while he was quote tweeting Valve here with the big announcement saying, "Gaming moves forward when players and developers have more ways to play and create, especially across open platforms. Expanding access across PC, console, and handheld devices reflects a future built on choice, core values that have guided Xbox's vision from the start. As one of the largest publishers on Steam, we welcome new options for players to access games everywhere. Congrats on today's announce." So, I mean, look, he throws that in there. They are one of the largest publishers on Steam, and I'm sure they are. They release a lot of games on Steam, but I mean, Microsoft is also trying to do what Valve is doing right now, and that's create a hybrid-like device that brings the PC experience to the living room, that's more dressed up like a console. So I don't know about this one. I know Phil is going to do the congratulations and stuff to play nice, but I do wonder if this is something that is somewhat frustrating for Microsoft, because Steam is it's the biggest marketplace for gaming on Windows. And now here they show up with their own box that does not run Windows out of the box. Yeah, with Microsoft, you can only really look at that as competitor, even though they do sell on their platform. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. Microsoft with their Windows box versus Valve with their SteamOS box. And then the last thing that we have here, Valve announced, is their new Steam controller. Now, it is designed, it looks like it's heavily inspired by the Steam Deck, and this immediately puts some people off. I mean, it's, when I first looked at it, it has the same kind of shape as, so if you have a drone and you have one of those, like the controller that has the screen, it looks like it's that same shape, just without the screen. And they do have the dual symmetrical analog sticks there in the middle with 2 touchpads right below it, taking up what would normally be just a large empty space there. And those are fully enabled with haptics and stuff, again, similar to the Steam Deck. You do have 4 back buttons. The thumbsticks are magnetic using TMR technology, and it also supports capacitive touch. So they didn't say anything about drift. I don't think they can in terms of maybe legal stuff or marketing or whatever. This should cut down on, I assume, just any kind of drift you would see. It does have HD rumble, they did use the term HD rumble. Grip sense, it's a new input that can enable gyro with capacitive touch. They show that on the back there, where I guess you press down on it and it can then all of a sudden activate gyro, or they say it can be remapped like any other button. 35 plus hours of battery life, and there's a wireless transmitter you can use that also doubles as a charging station. Bluetooth or just a straight up USB connection also supported. Here's the thing though, with everything we've talked about here today, no pricing details for any of it. It is all coming out early 2026 according to Valve, which means it doesn't necessarily all have to come out at the same time. It could be staggered releases, but I think it'd be weird if their Steam machine came out without the Steam controller. So I kind of feel like the Steam controller and the Steam machine come out together, or I guess you could have the controller come out first, then the Steam machine, since the controller could just be used for just any PC. But the Steam, their console kind of needs, I feel like, a somewhat proprietary or branded controller. It would make sense there. As for the Steam frame, that could be kind of on its own. So we'll have to see, as pricing is going to determine a lot of the views around this hardware. So some are already looking at that Steam machine as kind of disappointing in terms of the technical specs. But if it's $400 to $500, I think people will go, you know what? That's not bad. Kind of the same thing with their Steam frame. If it's comparable to the Quest 3 with pricing, I think people look at it very favorably. So we'll kind of hang out and wait for that. There have been some images going around with teardown of the Steam machine, and I think we're going to look at that in a separate video, maybe later on today. So keep an eye out for that. Next up, let's talk about apparently PlayStation and mobile, as we have one game in particular they have officially announced. We have another we'll get to here later on in the show that apparently just kind of leaked out ahead of time, but we'll start here. Ratchet and Clank. There, a new Ratchet and Clank game gets announced. People are really excited, like, awesome. Then they go to the video. It's a mobile game, and it's only coming to mobile. So, okay, here's Sony's mobile initiative that they have talked about a bit. Okay, it's bearing some fruit here. Just got downvoted quite a bit because it's a mobile game. It's not a new PlayStation 5 title, but we can see the trailer here. Now, this is Ratchet & Clank Ranger Rumble. It is a real-time multiplayer arena shooter, and they showed it off quite a bit. I mean, visually speaking, it is a game on mobile phones. I think it looks pretty good, or at least it will look good there on, I mean, phones are pretty big nowadays, but you know what I mean? Like it's even smaller than tablet-sized screen. It should look pretty good. It's free to download, which means yes, there will be a bunch of microtransactions I'm sure that will follow. It's on mobile. It's what you expect. Android and iOS, you can pre-register now. They just say it's coming soon. But then I see some people saying it's already available in some regions. So I'm not really sure what the rollout strategy is here. Maybe it's that situation of you put your info in and then you'll just randomly get an email that's like, oh, you're good to go. Go ahead, hop in. You can start playing. So, I mean, look, I don't play a lot of these kind of mobile games. I mean, the ones I did play, it feels like forever ago now, were like the more turn-based or even some of the card collecting ones, like Dokkan Battle or something. And that felt like, again, another lifetime ago now. But these games that are a bit more real-time, I see the pull for things like Genshin Impact. People do really get into those. I'm curious about something like a Ratchet and Clank on mobile phones. Is there enough interest there? Do they have enough plan that can really keep this going? Because the thing with mobile games, that audience they do expect constant updates and content because at the end of the day, it is a live service title. So we'll see how the mobile division can hold up for this one since, yeah, not a PlayStation 5 game. Interesting decision there. I think they could still do it if they want. Like, they could just port it over to PS5 and it's like, here you go, just see what you think. Just interesting that they decide not to even run with at least a version of that on the PS5 at launch. And in our last bit of news, we're going to stick with Sony and their mobile push once again. This one, though, is in collaboration with a partner, but it's still PlayStation Studios, I guess, and that's Horizon. Yeah, so we've been hearing about this Horizon MMO. I think there are technically 2 Horizon multiplayer games in development right now. One of them has been discussed as an MMO, and it seemed like it would be going to mobile phones, and we heard about PC, and then we thought, okay, yeah, then on PlayStation as well. It would make sense to push it out everywhere you can, like Genshin Impact. Well, it's not the case. And this is a weird one from some of the early leaks that are getting out there, because at least at the time of this recording, it has not been announced yet. And because of that, while there is an entire 10-minute video and trailer showing this game off, I can't show it because Sony has been known to strike that stuff down in a hurry in the past. But still, I'll have a link down below to The Verge, who went ahead and just embedded it completely onto their own website. It's not even on YouTube or anything. They just dropped it there and stored it on their website. Again, probably from concerns of Sony showing up. But we could see this. This is over on The Verge, where they say the new game is called Horizon Steel Frontiers, and Sony and the Korean video game company NCSoft are working together on it. Based on a more than 10-minute video that The Verge has seen featuring a mix of cinematic and pre-alpha gameplay footage as well as developer interviews, the game will focus strongly on fighting the Horizon series giant mechanical beasts and being able to do so with other people. Now, the way they explained how this happened exactly, they said they spotted promotional art for Steel Frontiers on a website used to share game assets that media and influencers are approved to use. And by going through different folders, and looked like it was, I guess, like a Google Drive account, they came across this trailer. Now, as part of this trailer, we do have Jan Bart Van Beek, who's a studio director at PlayStation's Guerrilla Games, talking about this, saying, quote, Horizon Zero Frontiers is a full-fledged MMORPG that NCSoft has built specifically for mobile. With Steel Frontiers, you can step into this world anywhere, anytime. Players take on the role of machine hunters, chasing opportunity in a region called Deathlands. This is inspired by Arizona and New Mexico. You're sharing the frontier with thousands of other players, sometimes working together to take down machines, and other times competing with rival tribes or fighting over resources. And that mix of cooperation and competition creates moments that you could never script. Here's where it gets weird. Okay. They say they're working to make it available as soon as possible, but they announce it for PC and mobile, iOS and Android then, but not PlayStation 5. What in the world? That one was weird. Now, again, I guess there could be more to this announcement as it becomes official and all of a sudden there's a PlayStation 5 logo on it, but according to the trailer that they saw that seems like it's set up ready for the reveal, that's not the case. And this is a strange one. If Sony, working with NCSoft, was like, hey, let's also, get this on the PlayStation 5, where we've sold a significant number of Horizon games. So PC and mobile. I get the push for mobile. Like, there's a lot of money to be made there. You could have a wide audience that you've never tapped into all of a sudden become aware of these intellectual properties, and then maybe branch out and check out the console that you release. There is at least a mindset there that makes sense for business. This is just weird. So again, when it becomes official, I am curious if we get any questions around why it wouldn't be on PlayStation 5. So that definitely not a great couple of announcements yesterday for PlayStation fans or owners, because here's a Ratchet and Clank game and it's on mobile devices. Here's a Horizon MMORPG that's being dressed up as this awesome thing where you play with a bunch of different people online, and it's on PC and mobile. At least that monitor that Sony announced the other day is making more and more sense now. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if the price isn't crazy high, are you interested in picking up the newly revealed Steam machine? 56% say yes, 44% say no. Okay, that's not bad. I mean, look, here's the thing. If you're someone who already has a PC and you're fine with it, and there might not be a reason for you to get this Steam machine, but I can see some people who have maybe a really nice PC in one room, but are looking for maybe a living room device that can play a lot of their games there without too much issue, and your Steam library comes over. I think it would make sense to buy that as even a secondary device in the house. So that makes sense, but I'm curious about people who don't really play a lot of PC games, but have been curious and are like, maybe if there is something that's a console-like box, if this would pull them in, if it was, say, $500. That's where it's going to come down to the price point being crucial. If this thing shows up and it starts at $800, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for most people. But if Valve can really figure out that price point and have it at that $500 or less, I think this could do well, and I'm curious if they're going to be able to get it into stores, because that's the other thing. They sell a lot of their stuff online, and that's it. So can they have a retail presence for the Steam machine and I guess their VR headset and their controller? That will be key, and I'll be really curious to see if they finally make that push. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from GBA, who says, remember when digital games had less overhead costs than physical and prices were supposed to go down? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Well, look, here's the thing. We all know digital games cost significantly less than physical games to distribute. It just does. You don't have to worry about shipping games, producing games, the cases, the disc, give cuts to the retailer and the wholesaler. There's a whole chain there, by the way, that you have to go through. And then also from, we'll say, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, EA, Ubisoft, whoever, their entire departments there that have to coordinate and make sure everything works out for these games getting to where they're supposed to go. I mean, think about the global launch of titles, and you have to have physical games everywhere in the world. It is crazy stuff to figure out. So then you go back to digital, you eliminate a lot of that, expense, and all of a sudden, if you're Sony, you release God of War, a new God of War, and you sell 10 million copies in the first month or something, it's just 100% yours. There's no retail facing anything, so that's it. You figure, that should cost less money for consumers. Like it should be cheaper, right? Well, no, they're just going to make more money. That's how it works. So I know there were thoughts around that, but I mean, we just gotta get real with that one. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see my initial reaction as the Steam machine was revealed and we were going over it in real time as all the information was dropping. I went ahead and put up a video for that yesterday, and I'll leave that right below it. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.